You're listening to School Counseling Simplified, a podcast with easy-to-implement strategies for busy school counselors. Here's your host, Rachel Davis from Bright Futures Counseling.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening to School Counseling Simplified. So today I want to spend the month of December talking to you about a few things that are likely stressing you out and how you can think about them differently. So these three areas are things that I know myself as a counselor struggled with in the past, and that I know just from talking to many of you on Instagram or in our Facebook group that you are struggling with as well. So I wanted to address these three areas that are likely causing you stress and like you want to pull your hair out, and then talk about how you can think about them differently and provide you with some easy to implement actionable strategies that you can start right away. So, to begin with, I want to talk about scheduling. Yes, the scheduling episode is here. So, if you've been listening to School Counseling Simplified, any of our previous episodes, sometimes I will offer scheduling as like a solution or mention scheduling, and I'll say, but we're going to have an episode on that later where we're going to deep dive into scheduling. And all of you are probably like, okay, when's the scheduling episode coming? It is here, my friends. So, scheduling's a struggle. Let's be real. Do you feel like you are constantly putting out fires and pulled in too many directions? Because you are not alone. I used to feel that way all the time. It does not mean you're a bad counselor. It's a super normal problem to have. Even if you have been a counselor for 20 years, it comes in phases, right? Like one year you may feel like you have it all dialed in and smooth sailing, and then change of leadership or a different student population or a new school or something happens, and then you just feel like you're in crisis response mode all over again. And remember, we want our school counseling program to be proactive and preventative, not reactive. And I know all of you want that for your program, but making that a reality is tricky, right? It's easier to say, like, I have a proactive program, but day to day, you might be in that reactive mind where you're just constantly responding to problems and you feel like you can never catch up. So if that sounds like you, this episode is for you. And maybe you're split between two schools. I have mentioned before that when I was working at the elementary school in San Diego County, I had two different schools. So I had the primary K to 2 school and then the elementary 3 to 5 school. And I was doing it different days of the weeks, but then I ended up, they wanted like a counselor presence on campus every day. So I would do mornings at one school, drive over during lunch. That's right. That was my lunch break. And then do the second school. I'm like eating a burrito in the car on the way. Thankfully, they were close together. But anyways, you can understand how that's even more of a challenge. And I want to share a couple personal stories that I'm sure you can relate to just about scheduling and how these things happened to me before I had systems put in place for my schedules. And they were horrible and they made me so stressed. And these two stories, they're funny now looking back on, but at the time it was very upsetting and stressful. But now I have systems in place to avoid these things from happening. So let me tell you the first one. The first story I have for you is it was my first year counseling, and I was going to do, my class counseling lessons. And I had talked to the teachers about when to come in, and I had a lesson scheduled with this first grade teacher. We had selected this time. Let's just, for the example's sake, say it was Thursday at 11. And this teacher was very intimidating. She was kind, but she was she was seasoned. She had been there for years, and she just knew the way she liked to run things. I would say her students were the most well-behaved. You could put any kid in that class and it would come out transformed, which really speaks to her behavior management style. So she was a wonderful teacher, but she was very intimidating to someone who was new on the scene, and she was very good friends with the previous counselor. So I feel like she didn't like me from the start. So anyways, I had a lesson with her Thursday at 11, and at the time, instead of going into the teachers' classrooms, our instructional coach had suggested that I use her room because she had a really good projector, and that way I wouldn't have to like carry my laptop from class to class, so we could just set it all up in there and the kids come to that one room, and that would be like the counseling room, which looking back it seems like a good idea at the time, but now I see a lot of problems with that scenario. And if you're listening, you might be like, yeah, that wouldn't really work. But I was brand new. I was, okay, yeah, let's do that. So I told that class, the first grade class, to meet me at that building, and I would be there. It was like a mobile or whatever, and I'm like, meet me at the mobile at 11. And of course I should be there at 10:50, prepping, setting up, and that way when they arrive, it should be good to go. Well, as you know, these things happen where a crisis happened. I honestly don't even remember what the crisis was, but it was something they needed me walkie talkie. Rachel, we need you right away. Come over to, the recess area. Someone's having a crisis. We need you right down, meltdown. So I go over there probably 10:30, lose track of time. I don't know. Anyways, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have a lesson. I have to leave. Like, I honestly, like I said, I don't really remember the exact crisis. I don't know if the crisis hopefully it was resolved before I left. But again, my first year scheduling's a hot mess. Who knew? But I left and transferred it to someone else to handle. Ran, literally running, like sweating all flustered, get to the mobile to meet them, and they're all standing outside in a line and the kids are singing. She has them singing some like educational song, and she's just very calm and collected and made it even more intimidating. And I was like, "Oh, hey, I'm so sorry. Like, so and so was having a meltdown and really needed my support." And she was just not having it. She was like, "We were told to be here at 11." Just firm, which she was right. I mean, I told them I need to respect her time. That was her class time. They left their classroom to come meet me, and I wasn't there. And I'm like cringing telling that story, and I just feel so bad for my former self and want to give her a hug. But that is one example how scheduling can be brutal. And another story that happened to me. So, like I said, I was split between two schools. And at one school, I had a morning duty to see that the kids, when they get off the bus, to say like, "Hey, hope you're having a good day." And I actually loved having that duty. It was just being the first face that they see at school all day. So that was a really cool one to have. I preferred that to like a lunch duty or a recess duty. I kind of got to make a connection with kids, even kids I didn't see. So I really liked that duty. And let's say it started 15 minutes before school starts, for example. Well, then, like 45 minutes before school starts, I had a meeting at my other school. And it was a meeting I planned. It was for the character education team. Some teachers were on the team with me. And we were discussing things to do with our student ambassadors. And so I would have that meeting. And the schools, fortunately, were very close together, like I mentioned. But I was in that meeting, and then I would jump in the car, go to the other school, and then try to be there right before the kids got off the buses. Well, I was late a few times. And the person who was doing another duty near the buses would have to like cover for me. And then she would be so mad thinking that, she thought I had just arrived at my house. And everyone knew I had a long commute because I lived like an hour away. So I feel like she thought I was just running late, strolling up with my coffee or whatever. That was her perspective. But I had really already been on campus for 30 minutes at the other school planning these character education activities. So, but it didn't matter to her time. Again, I wasn't respecting her time. She was now having to kind of cover for me, and I wasn't respecting the kids' time. And it was a mess. Left me feeling frazzled and just super overwhelmed, super stressed. And the same thing kind of justifying, oh, well, I was at the other school. Like, it doesn't matter. It's still, she doesn't need to know what I was doing. It was just that I wasn't there. Just like with the teacher, oh, I was in a crisis. Doesn't matter. She doesn't need to know what I was doing. I just wasn't there. So it made me look unreliable. And that's a problem, right? It's especially a problem when we're constantly saying we need to advocate for our positions and show everyone how awesome we are and a great asset to the school. It doesn't really communicate that way if we're really swamped with our schedule. So I wanted to share those two stories with you because I thought maybe you could relate. And I wanted to let you know this is a super common problem that a lot of counselors have. But fortunately, that year, after these incidences, developed some systems and have continued to use these systems, and they've been very effective for me. So I want you to think about how great would it be if you had time for everything? Seriously. If you had time to plan class lessons. So I know a lot of you are taking work home and you're working in the evenings, or you're barely planning them at all, or you're last minute buying something on TPT when you would rather plan your own. So how great would that be if you had a planning period like a teacher did to plan your class lessons? How great would it be to not have to work at home in the evenings? Shout out to distance learning people. It's probably even worse for you because there's no separation between home and school. So you're just working all the time. Your computer's around all the time. So it's really hard to have that separation. And the reason it would be good to have more time is because it would free up some space and provide you with more time to see the kids and to have a bigger impact. So remember, that's why you became a school counselor, right? You wanted to have an impact, change lives, and to help students. But unfortunately, your schedule gets bogged down with meetings and duties and lessons. I mean, lessons you are helping students too, but you know what I mean. It gets bogged down with all these things, and that when you were in grad school envisioning yourself as a counselor, you pictured yourself running small groups and having deep one on one conversations. And now your reality likely doesn't feel like that. I also want you to think about recognition. So I'm always saying that we need to advocate for our roles as counselors and that we want to be recognized for, the great work that we're doing on campus. A lot of times people are unclear on what we're doing, or the purpose that we're serving there. So for recognition, you want to appear dependable and reliable. Like I mentioned before, those horror stories of myself, that was not being dependable or reliable. And it's a mindset shift. So I want you to feel like a counselor who is calm, in control. You are early to that meeting. You're sitting at the table waiting on everyone else to trickle in. You might get to catch up with someone. Even if it's a Zoom meeting, you're early, you're there on time. You're not, have things going on in the background or on the side, versus being frazzled and sneaking in last minute. And then you know how it is. It always works this way. You hit a stoplight that you usually don't hit, or your coffee spills in your lap. It's like once one thing kind of gets off, it all gets off, and you end up being very frazzled. So it's a mindset shift. We want them to recognize you as someone who is calm and competent and in control, right? So you need to change your mind to feel that way. You need to approach your situations and set yourself up for success so you can appear that way, which will cause you to be more confident, which will actually cause you to be that way, if that makes sense. It sounds kind of silly saying it out loud, but it's a cycle, right? You're almost tricking yourself, like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you say, I am someone who is early and prompt, I'm calm, I'm in control, and I'm not stressed or frazzled when it comes to my schedule. Even if you don't believe that to be true yet, just kind of tell yourself these mantras and say, I'm going to act like someone who is that way. I'm going to act like a person. What would a person who is in control of their schedule look like? What would a person who is in control of their schedule do? What would a person who is in control of their schedule say? Think of those things. Really try to embody it. And then once you start to embody those characteristics of that person, you become that person. And then the cycle continues. So it's just a mindset shift I want you to work on. I know it's tricky, but just by showing up as if you are in control of your schedule can help you be in control of your schedule. Now, I mentioned advocating for a little bit. Your time is valuable, and we want people to know your time is valuable and that you are not a catch-all position to do all of these other little things that no one else wants to do. So we've talked in previous episodes about advocating for yourself and saying no to or making the most out of non-counselor duties. And that is so important when it comes to your schedule. You want people to see that your time is valuable. You're not just someone they can dump undesirable tasks on. And in order for them to see that, you need to be more visible so you can be, in turn, more understood and valued. For example, if there is some task that needs to get done, an undesirable task, and they're like, oh, well, let's just have the counselor do it. And someone's like, no, we can't ask her. That's the time that she does her lessons. And they've seen you do your class lessons, and they see how impactful they are. So by doing a good job at these things and making sure that you're delivering great content and great services to your students through your lessons, your groups, and your individual sessions, and that you're showing up for your students when it comes to meetings, by doing those things, people will realize your position. You will be more understood, more valued, and in turn, they'll think your time is valuable, and they'll respect your schedule. So, a takeaway I have for you. I want you to do a 1-week time audit. Okay, So what does that look like? I want you to track everything you're spending your time on at work for 1 week. So, you can do this on pen and paper. You can use a timer on your phone, whatever. But I want you to track what you're doing. So 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, met, it was in a meeting. 10 to 10:30, met with a student. 10:30 to 11, had a group. Then maybe there's an hour where you were just running around doing different things. Then you were in a crisis for 30 minutes. Then you were doing paperwork for 45 minutes. Then you had another student, then another group. Kind of jot it down so you can see your time. Maybe email. That's going to be eye-opening. Okay, I answered email 5 separate times today. I had it up all day. So I spent 20 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 5 minutes there. Parent phone calls came in 5 different times throughout the day. Do a time audit to see where you are spending your time. Now, there's going to be 2 advantages to this. One, you can't really change your schedule or strengthen your schedule until you know where the deficits are, until you know, oh, why did I spend so much time on that? And you can kind of give yourself a reality check here and hold yourself accountable for wasted time. So I know you have limited time, and I honestly doubt you're like twiddling your thumbs at work, but perhaps you're spending time on things that someone else could do or that you could do more efficiently. So it's a cool task. It's like your little homework for the week. We're actually having 2 episodes this week. So this is your homework. I want you to try to audit it for 1 week, but at least a day or 2 before our next episode, and just kind of see, what do I spend my time on? And it may surprise you. You may spend way more time answering email and answering phone calls than you do on actual student instruction. You may find that actual student instruction is the smallest amount of time that you're spending, and that's the whole reason you're a counselor, right? So it's very eye-opening. Please do that. I can't wait to hear about it. Please share it with me if you want to. And then the other thing I want you to do is work on that mindset shift that we talked about. Show up for yourself. Embody the person that you want to be when it comes to someone who is in control of their schedule. Fake it till you make it, in a sense, right? Act like you are that person. Then you will become that person, and then you won't be acting anymore. You will actually be doing those things. So in our next episode, I'm going to give you some real tactical strategies for managing your schedule. But today, I want you to audit your time and show up for yourself through a mindset shift. And the last thing I want you to do is download a stress-free school counseling freebie that I have for you. So this freebie has a lot of different tips on how to make your school counseling life less stressful. In particular, one that pertains to today's episode is a stress-free scheduling packet. Super helpful tidbits in here. I think you're really going to find it powerful as you're, auditing and making some changes to your schedule. So go ahead, and in the show notes, you can download the Stress-Free School Counseling freebie. This one is not in the free resource library, so you're going to have to head to the notes to click the link to download. Or if you're not really sure how to do that and you don't know what a show note is, send me a message and I'll just send you the link, okay? All right, guys, talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening to School Counseling Simplified. You can find the links from today's episode in the show notes. If you'd like to connect with Rachel, she's on Instagram and Teachers Pay Teachers at Bright Futures Counseling. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes of School Counseling Simplified. Talk to you next week.